Hello everyone, welcome to my Batman Arkham Origins. I am the Knight difficulty, no damage walkthrough. We'll be infiltrating the GCPD to gain access to the National Criminal Database. And it's been a while since I've done content for Batman Arkham Origins, but it's because I've been busy with my classes because we've entered midterm week and I've just done my first midterm for one of my classes and I got a 90%, which is great. And now I have to worry about another midterm coming up for my other class, so I'm having to devote a lot of time to that. But since the midterm isn't for a while, I decided to take the time to do this commentary for Batman Arkham Origins. And this time around, I'm going to focus a lot more on talking about Batman Arkham Origins rather than going on different tangents, because there is a lot to say about this game, especially from this point of the game and onward, because the GCPD represents the combat encounters at their worst, because on New Game Plus and I Am the Knight difficulty, most of the enemies have been replaced by armored guys in the GCPD, and I mentioned before in my previous videos that the way the armored guys are implemented in Batman Arkham Origins is not good compared to Batman Arkham City, for instance, because Batman doesn't have the best capabilities for dealing with them. He has very limited capabilities in terms of combat and gadgetry in order to deal with these guys. Like, in Batman Arkham City, you had access to the remote electric charge, and the remote electric charge, when you used it against an armored guy, would always float them to the ground. So you never had to waste time like going through additional rigid steps to just interrupt your flow into the combat encounter. With this, you're having to be very reliant upon like takedowns, for instance, and building up your combo, and you're also limited in terms of the things you can do because the armored guys have all these kind of capabilities that I really don't feel like should be the case. I mean, I understand with the whole idea of you having to stun them with your cape, this and that, but they're immune to the backclaw slam, they're immune to the aerial attack. The explosive gel is really the only good gadget you have for dealing with the armored guys initially, but with the risk involved with actually using the quickfire explosive gel in the middle of combat, not to mention how unresponsive the quickfire explosive gel can be when you're trying to detonate it. And, you know, I have thought about maybe stunning the armored guy, but instead of following up with a beatdown, I instead use the quickfire explosive gel, and maybe that'll do something, but that depends, because this game has problems with its combat systems and with other systems involved, and it's the buggiest Arkham game by far. But just because it's the buggiest doesn't mean it's the worst Arkham game, as one of my subscribers wants me to believe. He told me I should be playing Arkham City, but I already did content for Arkham City, so you should be checking that out, dude. But the worst Arkham game by far is Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate, and I've watched Batman Arkham videos do his walkthrough of Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate, and that game is so boring. There is so much when it comes to inconvenient designs. Like, for instance, in order to interact with anything in Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate, you have to first scan it in detective vision. And it just becomes a slogfest. It really becomes an inconvenient mess. Just, like, you have to waste time scanning things in detective vision, and it just becomes a chore in order to interact with them. It's so dumb. And then the level design of Blackgate itself within Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate makes no sense. It's so gamey in its designs. It's full of convoluted rooms. Like, how is this a prison complex? It's almost about as weird as the way the mansion was laid out in Resident Evil 1, the original version, or even in Resident Evil 1 Remake. And it's gamey designs that aren't worth it, and also you have to actually do stuff in previous areas in order to make progress. Like, you get to some door, for instance, in Joker's area, and in order to get a key, you have to do this really strange arcadey route of going back to Penguin's area and then gaining access to the codes that way. Like, why do you have to waste time with all this backtracking and all these moments where you just go off the linear path and it just breaks your pacing? It breaks the flow into the game. It's dumb. And then the combat is so simplified in Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate because it was originally developed on PS Vita. The stealth scenarios are pretty simple. The boss fights are so shit because they're so lame in their designs, and there's a lot of complaints with Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate with the inconsistent difficulty design. And there are definitely moments where like, for instance, in Black Mass boss fight, for some reason you have to waste time hitting an alarm. He shoots in that direction, but you can't just simply go behind him while he's shooting in order to actually silently take him down. Apparently he spins around if you don't specifically aim for the lights above. Like, what kind of old school scripting mechanics are these? That's so dumb. It's about as dumb as the detective mode thing that I described earlier. But that's what makes Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate the worst Arkham game, and why Batman Arkham Origins is not the worst. I mean, in terms of gameplay, Batman Arkham Origins is definitely not the best. I mean, this game has frame rate issues. This game has moments where the combat betrays you. Some of the combat scenarios aren't properly thought out. There are bugs associated with certain gadgets like the concussion detonator. In fact, this was actually the first time in this walkthrough that I noticed this issue with the concussion detonator. So you know how I mentioned before that the concussion detonator is the worst gadget ever made in the entire Arkham series because it has absolutely no utility and it just puts you in a bad spot rather than a good position because you're dazing the enemies and you're just swiping at thin air and you can't counter them. They're breaking the rules of the combat pretty much. And also, it's just useless against the armored guys. And given that this game does armored guys very poorly, you'd think the concussion detonator would be on par with the remote electric charge, but it isn't. Well, there's another problem with the concussion detonator. If you use it against the shield guy, for some reason, the active frame period on their shield bash is displaced. It causes the active frame period to be registered earlier in the animation, like way before the attack animation has even begun. So I had two moments that I've included in the blooper section of this video where I used the concussion detonator on a shield guy, and he goes to attack me, right? After he's stunned. And I end up taking damage before his shield even starts coming towards me, like before he's even initiated the attack animation. It is so bullshit. How the fuck did Warner Brothers mess up the concussion detonator to cause this kind of problem with displacement of the active frame period for the shield guys? That right there is so retarded. And there are just a lot of questionable design choices like that in Batman Arkham Origins because, again, Rocksteady kind of forced Warner Brothers into a corner, and they had to rush this game out the door in order to actually build a lot of intrigue for the next Arkham game. You know, they didn't want the whole memory of the Arkham games to fade completely, so that's why they released this game. But it was released in a rush state, and that's why there are a lot of problems with this game, gameplay-wise. But that still doesn't change the fact that I think this is my favorite Arkham game of all time, just with some of the other designs put in place, like with the difficulty mode, or with the whole premise of character development, and the idea that Batman just grows as a character more in this game, and some of the other portrayals of the villains as well. I mean, the open world is pretty bad in this game. It's very bland, this and that, but there are other things I can talk about that are positive with Batman Arkham Origins. But we've entered the GCPD building, so a vast majority of these enemies on New Game, they've now been turned into armored guys on New Game Plus and I Am the Night mode. And this extends to these guys over here, so this is an encounter you're not supposed to fight. You're not meant to deal with this combat encounter, but I'm guessing people in New Game just had a tendency of attacking all those guys just for the fun of it, and they won. So in order to disincentivize people from trying to deal with the combat encounter right here, they just turned all these enemies into armored guys, so it's more impossible to do. And as you can see right here, the SWAT team is incredibly corrupt. They're actually out on the bounty for Batman, the bounty that was created by Joker. Yeah, it's actually a little bit more common than you think with this kind of police corruption, because I mean, I remember reading an article about this like a couple of years ago about a Baltimore, Maryland team, like some department within the police department of Baltimore was actually corrupt, and I think they were running drugs or something, and I can't believe an entire department would do that. That's crazy. But it's way worse in Batman Arkham Origins because the entire SWAT division, as well as like 80% of the police department, is entirely corrupt. And Gordon is somehow not aware of this, which is very surprising. Although he is aware of this by the end of the game, which is good. But you'd think he would realize that sooner, though. But we have some combat encounters with the armored guys, and you see right there, I tried to use the remote claw in order to knock these guys out and then finish them off with ground takedowns. That didn't work, and the second time I used the remote claw, these two enemies didn't actually collide with each other, which is surprising. But this is not the best example of how rigid and badly designed some of the combat encounters with the armored guys can be. I mean, it's not really that they're badly designed. I mean, actually it is, but it's just more so you're opening the combat up to more holes with this enemy arrangement and with limiting Batman's capabilities because he doesn't have good gadgets or good abilities for dealing with these armored guys. It's in the next combat encounter that you really notice this. So, like, you have a couple of regular guys and a couple of armored guys, and your only options for dealing with the armored guys are just simply to use the cape stun against them and just beat down on them, or like use explosive gel. I mean, if you're trying to use the quick batarang, because this game has the whole problem where if you use a quick batarang on an armored guy and it hits them, it kills your combo, which was not the case in Batman Arkham City. The amount of times I'm trying to hit a normal guy and Batman accidentally prioritizes an armored guy and I lose the combo and then I have to build back up to it, and you can only do a lot of these long-range motions and long-range attacks if you're at X2 combo, which is stupid. Even Serum17 agrees that that's really stupid, that you have to get up to X2 combo in order to actually do all these long-range attacks. It's just bad. It really is. Like, I don't know how they could miss this kind of problem with the armored guys and the quick batarangs. But you see right here, I'm having to spend more time jumping over the enemies or jumping away and then prioritizing the regular guys, because if I even think about wasting time doing the beatdown, my inputs for countering other attacks can be delayed if I end up trying to counter during a specific part of the frame data for the cape stun or for doing the beatdown animation. It's stuff like that that's really bad, but at least right here I was able to deal with the armor guys effectively. But Serum17 says that the whole idea of Batman just jumping over enemies and just getting complete immunity from enemy attacks is a bad thing, but it's like, I think he's a little too trusting of the combat system. I don't think he's well aware of the flaws with the combat system, and even when he is, I think he's way too lenient with a lot of these problems. And when Batman Arkham Origins, for instance, has way more problems with its combat systems, like having to jump over enemies in order to get your bearings on the situation and to know which enemies to prioritize is very important. I mean, it's not just in Batman Arkham Origins, it's also in the other Arkham games as well. Like, situational awareness and actually trying to make sure that the game is playing by your rules, that right there is very important with the whole idea of jumping over enemies with impunity. That's a very important thing to realize. Oh, and also right here, this is a very strange design. So I made a mistake with the commentary in Batman Arkham Knight. So I mentioned before that this game was the only Arkham game where you could actually do knockdown smashes against the armor guys. That's not entirely accurate. You see, the thing is this. It's only these armored guys in the GCPD building that allow you to do knockdown smashes against them. So I guess this is an oversight on the developer's part. Maybe they intended for all the armor guys to be immune to knockdown smashes, but they forgot to program in the GCPD armored guys to be immune to the knockdown smash. But that's fucking stupid. Like, the whole risk versus reward system with using the knockdown smash against the armored guys, there's proper justification for it. You're going out of your way to do a loud takedown on an armored guy, and in the process, you're alerting the enemies to your position. That right there is the perfect trade-off right there. You get access to this ability to knock out the armored guys, but in the process, you alert the enemies to your position. It's no different to what the knockdown smash does normally. Why would this be any different with the armored guys? It makes no sense. And it's just, there are a lot of moments where you're having to rely upon some of the most convoluted methods ever for actually knocking out the armored guys in these Predator encounters. I mean, sometimes it's not always the case, but you know, for instance, when I have enemies engulfed in smoke from a smoke pellet and I'm trying to knock out the normal guys, but Batman ends up prioritizing the armored guys for whatever reason, and I can't do the knockdown smash against them because they just get out of the grab, which is stupid. Like, it's that kind of prioritization system where it really fucks me over a lot. I'm trying to get the regular guys, and Batman just keeps on prioritizing the armored guys in the smoke. It's stupid. It's stupid stuff like that that I feel just warrants the need for the armored guys to be susceptible to knockdown smashes. Not that they shouldn't be susceptible to the knockdown smashes. It's dumb like that. Oh, and also right here, this is me being experimental with the dive bombing, and I made a mistake right there. I should have done the dive bomb further along the walkway, not right here, because these enemies, they end up going back to this part of the walkway, and this is a part of the walkway where you cannot use the ledge takedown because of how close this floor is to the bottom floor. So because the difference between both floors is less, that's why I don't have the ability to do the ledge takedown, and so this ends up being very sloppy. I use the quickfire explosive gel to knock over the enemies, and then this is what allows me to actually deal with the rest of the enemies, and that's the end of that Predator encounter. Could have gone a lot better, but I wanted to do something very fun, like something that screams my own identity, not like what Batman Arkham Videos did in his Predator encounter with the GCPD guys. And, you know, like, the whole idea of dive bombing, I discovered this whole method of dive bombing being so powerful, and I wanted to put that to good use. Like, this is what I'm trying to do with a lot of the Predator encounters, but, of course, in the very first recording that I was doing for Batman Arkham Origins, I don't think I was taking the Predator encounters very seriously, so I was making a lot of mistakes, and just dragging out the recording when I shouldn't be doing that. On this right here, I think it's better to actually use your smoke pellet and then use your multi-batarang in order to knock over the regular guys. That's probably the better choice, because on my first attempt at this, in one of my bloopers, I was going to deal with the rest of the enemies, and I ended up prioritizing an armored guy with my quick batarang because the game decided to fuck me over, and I made mistakes, which was dumb. Yeah, better to use a smoke pellet right there. The game tutorializes to use the concussion detonator, but don't follow it. The concussion detonator is so useless. The only time the concussion detonator is ever good is against Copperhead, because this game wants to treat the concussion detonator like it's the stomp from the Evil Within, where the stomp on the Evil Within is useless for 95% of the game. But in those 5% moments where you're dealing with the alter egos die instantly from the stomp. And because you've gone through so much of the game not realizing the utility of the stomp, because every time you tried to use the stomp, it's been useless against the Haunted, you never think to use it against the alter egos, and that was a genius design choice from Shinji Mikami. That I understand, because the stomp isn't really useful for a lot of situations, aside from situations where you're dealing with high-powered enemies like the alter egos. But when it comes to a basic fundamental mechanic, like the concussion detonator, like your gadgets are meant to be like the most fundamental abilities readily available to you. Why would you ever make it where it's only useful during one boss fight, and then the rest of the time it just opens the combat up to a bunch of holes? And that right there, that was dumb. I ended up taking fire damage out of nowhere. I didn't even see the fire right there. And I was not going to use that as an excuse to just restart the whole entire checkpoint again. I was just going to continue on. I'm not going to restart through the bullshit. But here is a really cool moment. So we get the chance to interact with Barbara Gordon in this cutscene right over here. This right here is a pretty cool way to cement the origin of Batgirl, basically, because this is when she first meets Batman. She's not yet Batgirl yet, but this serves as inspiration for her to actually become Batgirl. And I like the way Barbara is portrayed here. I mean, we don't see her often. I kind of wish she appeared a little bit more in the game, but we only see her here, and we also see her during, or rather we hear her during Penguin's side mission, where we're taking out those weapons crates. Oh, this right here, look at that. We're using the disruptor right here, but somehow, the first time I used the... Look, right there, you see that? The disruptor somehow collided with Batman's hitbox. How is that possible? The disruptor on this game is the worst disruptor in the entire Arkham series, because for some reason you have to use it like it's a gun. You have to fire a projectile at the enemies, but it's programmed very poorly, because the way the projectile comes out of the disruptor, it's not programmed very well, and it's like it's colliding with other hitboxes. And I get a lot of moments where I'm trying to use the disruptor from cover, like around a corner, and it just clips into a corner, because the way they set up the corner doesn't fit the way Batman's animation is when he's trying to use the disruptor around the corner. It's badly designed. But also, that combat encounter that we just did was where I actually discovered this whole problem with the concussion detonator and on the shield guys, and it was broken as hell. So bad. But here we have Gordon, and we're going to have a combat encounter coming up with Brandon and two armored guys. Cool that we get this interaction with Gordon. I feel like Gordon is better portrayed in Batman Arkham Origins, because Gordon doesn't get much of a spotlight role in Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, or Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight especially should have been the time where we see Gordon more often, but we lose out on Gordon in like the first 10% of the game. Then we don't see him until like the last like 10% of the game. It's dumb. It's dumb that they would do that, and they want you to feel something for Gordon. They want you to feel something for Barbara, but we barely see them in Batman Arkham Knight. And so when we do get these kind of moments where they showcase their character moments, it doesn't have the right feeling, because we haven't had enough build-up with these characters. At least with Gordon, there's better build-up here in Batman Arkham Origins. And also with Barbara, I just feel like, given the role she has right now, given the fact that this is kind of in her early stages of trying to be Batgirl, like she hasn't even started the whole path on becoming Batgirl, I can understand her limited role here, and that she's only reserved for side missions and the like. So that's perfectly fine, but at least it's more of a proper connection with her compared to how it is in Batman Arkham Knight. I didn't really feel a lot of connections to Oracle in Batman Arkham Knight, because she's just wasted as a character, if you ask me. And every time you do these weapons crates, you get to hear a quote from her, which is nice. And I'm taking the time to do this combat encounter right here, even though it's entirely optional, because these guys bullied me a lot in my very first recording of Batman Arkham Origins, because they took advantage of the holes present with the combat system, and it just made my life hell. And I'm just getting revenge on these guys, because that's just me trying to express my anger towards these guys for ruining my time with Batman Arkham Origins and with how clean the recording was going most of the time. But this is pretty much the last part of the video, so once I finish Penguin's side mission and I get inside of the manhole cover to get to the sewers, this will be the end of this video. But I have to talk about something real quick. So, Share Factory got an update recently. It was a pretty major update apparently, even though all they did was just add some kind of bits feature, which I'll never use for these kind of recordings. But I think the update broke something very important in Share Factory. So if you watch my video that showcased how I actually record these kind of walkthroughs, you'll understand that I acknowledge something about track 2. Track 2 is the track you use when you're recording your voice for commentary. But I mentioned that when you use the split clip function in order to cut your track 2, for some reason, there are moments where you split a clip using the split clip function, and the second half of the clip just disappears for no reason. And originally, you could just use the trim clip functionality on the first half in order to restore the second half of the clip you lost. Well, now, whenever I get this whole issue where the second half of my track 2 clip just disappears and I use the trim clip function on the first half, Share Factory just freezes and it crashes. I mean, not that it crashes, it doesn't get any kind of error message, and I'm still able to go to the PlayStation homepage. So it's not a crash, it just freezes for no reason because Share Factory doesn't know what to do. And this is bizarre. I cannot believe this slipped Sony's attention when they were implementing this update. That is awful. So it means that the moments when I'm trying to trim out any moments in track 2 where I make a mistake in my grammar or I end up ruining my phrases, this and that, anytime I try to do that during a moment where the second half of my clip disappears whenever I use the split clip function, Share Factory will just freeze. And I have to redo the entire commentary again because I don't think it's ever going to do what it's trying to do. I don't think the freezing will stop. I have to quit the entire application and redo the commentary that I was doing. So I have to be even more wary of this whole issue where I use the split clip function on a track 2 clip and the second half just disappears, because if I try to restore using the trim clip function for the first half of the track 2 clip, it's going to lead to this freezing error. And it's not a crash, it just freezes. It's so bizarre. How the hell did that miss their attention? That is dumb. But I think I need to report this to Sony or something, because at least I understand what is causing this. But the fact that it occurred and they didn't see it in this update, I mean, I know this kind of problem is likely going to occur with a major update, but, you know, I never encountered this kind of issue before with previous updates to Share Factory. So why it's happening now, I don't know, but I hope they find it. And at least with my guidance, they'll actually decipher this a little bit more as to what is actually causing this problem. But we're just doing more of these weapons crates over here. And I think this is as good a time as any to talk about the gadgets. A lot of the gadgets on this game are pretty bad. I mean, you have your standard Batarang, you have your Bat Claw, you have your Explosive Gel. You obviously know how that works. This is just like Batman Arkham City, only they ruined the Batarangs because for whatever reason you hit an armored guy with the quick Batarang and your combo just drops for no reason. Then you have the Disruptor. The Disruptor is the worst Disruptor on this game and in the entire Arkham series. Like, it's just, it fires like a projectile. It can clip onto Batman's hitbox for no reason at all. And it has travel time to it, so if the enemies happen to go around a corner or something before the projectile even makes contact with them, it will clip into the geometry. And at least they fixed this in Batman Arkham Knight, because Batman Arkham Knight utilized a very similar format to Batman Arkham Origins Disruptor, but it was hit scan based, not projectile based, and there weren't any moments where the projectile that's fired from the Disruptor in Batman Arkham Knight would clip onto Batman's own hitbox. They refined the Disruptor a lot more, and the Disruptor in Batman Arkham Knight is my favorite Disruptor. Although I still like the Disruptor from Batman Arkham City because it's not a projectile. It's just you look at a guy, there's no projectile fired, Batman just presses the Disruptor, and the guy's gun is disabled. How that works, I don't know, but it's nice that it's not projectile-based. Batman Arkham Origins definitely made me hate this kind of projectile weaponry. And then you have the Remote Claw. The Remote Claw is pretty useful in Predator encounters, and it can have a bit of utility in combat if you're trying to start a combat encounter, but Other than that, I don't try to use the remote claw so much because the remote claw can definitely make a lot of predator encounters simple. I'm not saying don't use it. It is a fun tool to use, and I like hearing the enemies be scared when they're just suddenly being pulled onto a gargoyle point. It's funny as hell. But I'm going to make sure that I don't use the heavy reel ammo on the remote claw in order to string guys up onto vantage points, because I want to actually approach these predator encounters in a more creative fashion than that, even though it is fun to do. So that's the remote claw, and then we have the concussion detonator, which is so useless. You can even see me using it, and the game doesn't tell you this, but you actually have the ability to manually detonate the concussion detonator after a certain amount of time. So you pretty much throw the concussion detonator, roll away, and then you just detonate it. I mean, the charge isn't much though, or although, is that really a thing though? Because I get a lot of inconsistencies. Like, I feel like if you let the charge build up on the concussion detonator, it's meant to deliver a stronger charge, but at times it doesn't do that. And even when I just immediately detonate it, it's still equally as strong a charge. It's confusing. But don't use the concussion detonator. It is so useless. But use it on Copperhead's boss fight, because the concussion detonator will instantly take out any of the hallucinations that Copperhead spawns during your boss fight. It is good. Like, that right there is pretty much Shinji Mikami design, but completely unearned. And then we have the glue grenade, and the glue grenade is really the only good tool you have against the armored guys in the middle of combat encounters. Oh, that right there. You see this? This is a great example of this game trying to favor guys with guns on rooftops while you're busy traversing the city. And it goes against the design philosophies that Rocksteady was trying to go for with Detective Vision, where they didn't want people to be in Detective Vision all the time. But this kind of design choice forces the player to be in Detective Vision all the time, and it's dumb. And not only that, but there are just times where the enemies don't load into the map correctly. The draw distance on the enemies when you're in Detective Vision is not honest. Because at times they'll be so close to you, but they still haven't loaded in. And so you go to a rooftop thinking it's clear, but the enemies just spawn out of the blue, and it's bullshit. That right there is badly designed. But this is the end of this video, but here are some bloopers. So that right there, my quick batarang prioritizing armored guy, it threw me off in combat, so I can't do any of the long-range attacks. That right there, I used the quick batarang in free flow focus. It hit the armored guy, but it didn't kill my combo, which makes no sense. And we're just doing this combat encounter right here. There's a concussion detonator. So, see, I use a concussion detonator in order to stun him, and he just cancels his animation when I go to strike him. And then that right there, I use the concussion detonator on the shield guy. Watch. See? He hit me before he even did the attack animation. And then here are a couple of moments where the disruptor clips onto Batman's own hitbox somehow. Look at that. That is bullshit. And then this same issue happens again, where the shield guy gets stunned by the concussion detonator, but his active frame period is displaced. So he's able to hit me before he's even done the attack animation. Do not use the concussion detonator on these guys. Just don't use it at all. If it's going to present with this kind of bullshit, do not use it. But stay tuned for the future parts of this walkthrough. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.